What's up, sauces and slashettes? My name's Nightfall, and welcome back to another anime analysis video. Today we will be discussing the truly fantastical isekai called Skeleton Knight in Another World. To start off this video, the very first scene in the show pulls a goblin slayer, if you catch my drift, and lets you know that this show will, at times, cover some pretty dark topics, one of which we'll get to later in the video. However, it's not all dark, as this show does a great job of throwing in light-hearted comedy wherever it can without it overpowering the seriousness of the show. Essentially, it's like if Overlord was more light-hearted and the protagonist was a lovable, goofball good guy instead of a villain. We'll get to the characters and things in a second, but first I want to bring up the world building. As I mentioned in my Handyman Saito analysis, world building is my favorite thing about any story, and this show has a good amount of it. You have two brothers in a fight for the throne. Prince Dakares, who is backed by the East Empire, I'll call it the Holy Empire later in the video, who is also trying to invade the West Empire, which backs the other brother, Prince Sect. Amidst all that, there is a slave trade and oppression of elves and beastmen, and also the taming of wild monsters to be used as weapons, of which Prince Dakares and the Holy Empire is a part of, as well as multiple assassination attempts and, well, successes, carried out by Prince Sect, who is obsessed with getting the throne. If you think all of that being packed into a 12-episode season is complicated, you'd actually be wrong. Somehow, some way, the show is written well enough that it doesn't get complex and is easy enough to follow along with without getting lost or confused. Now back to the characters. As I mentioned, Ark is a goofball who will help anyone in need that is within his reach. There's also Aryan and Chiome, who are an elf and beastman respectively, trying to save their enslaved comrades and kin as well as end the oppression of their respective races. And even side characters like Marka have depth, as she is a daughter wanting to help her now widowed mother even if it puts her own life in danger. This anime also has some of the best character designs I've seen, with my personal favorites being Chiome and Goemon. Speaking of those two, the Beastman clan they are a part of, which is called the Jinshin clan, raises a mystery that I want to discuss really fast before getting into how this show covers a very dark subject. Before the next segment about the dark subject, I wanted to talk about the mystery of the Beastman's Jinshin clan and its great founder, Hanzo. As Ark deduces, after gaining more information regarding the Jinshin clan, it becomes clear that Hanzo is most likely from Japan, given his name and who the Jinshin titles are based off of. This raises so many questions. You see, Hanzo lived 600 years prior to Ark's arrival in this new world. And if he was Japanese, how did he get there? If this world is the game Ark was playing, then Hanzo shouldn't have been able to get here. However, given the fact that Ark seems to not know any of the locations nor some of the creatures and monsters, it's very obvious that this isn't the game he played. But if it's not, then why is Ark his game avatar, and why does he have access to his character's magic and equipment? We learn later on that his body looks like that due to the effects of a curse. But why was he cursed to look like his game character? Let alone cursed at all, and by who? Unlike most isekai where the MC is summoned or reincarnated, Ark just sort of wakes up in this world with no explanation. Was it the same for Hanzo, or was he somehow summoned 600 years ago by some deity to help in the war that was going on back then? And if he wasn't from Japan, and was just named after Hanzo like Chiome and Goemon, who named him, and how did they get there? All this mystery and all these questions come from two brief conversations about the Jinshin clan, and it gives us as viewers something to look forward to finding out in the future. With that out of the way, let's get into the dark subject this show covered. So the topic this show covered heavily this season was oppression and racism, and it tackled it amazingly. We see Aryan distrust every human, including distrusting and trying to kill Ark immediately after seeing him. Of course, later on, her and Ark become companions, but he's still the only human she trusts. Much, much later in the show, we meet an elf who, much like Aryan and other elves we have met, wants the oppression to end. That being Karsi, who takes a far different approach and teaches Aryan something very important. You see, Carsey lived in a human town for 10 years, which Aryan couldn't understand, and tried to hide his ears as she didn't trust any of the humans. Carsey then shares his beliefs and shows how different of a mindset he has from Aryan. You see, Aryan is trying to end oppression through hatred, violence, and tension, wanting elves and humans to, while remaining peaceful, leave each other alone. Which in the long run obviously would lead to a war at some point, but hey, it's understandable given what they've gone through. On the flip side, however, Carsey wants to end the oppression through love, peace, and acceptance, living with and loving humans who live with and love him back. He wants there to be a day where elves and humans coexist with one another instead of essentially segregating themselves from each other, which is what Aryan's hatred and actions would inevitably end up doing. He shows to Aryan that, much like Ark, there are humans who despise the mistreatment of elves and will treat them as equals. He shows her that fighting and tension and hatred will only bring more hatred, and instead, the best way to combat oppression is to have faith and love for those willing to accept you. That love and acceptance can only happen if those in need are willing to accept it. This anime is lighthearted at many different points. The characters all have depth and fit into the world that is built around them. But the serious topics and lessons this show gives and covers are where the writing truly shines, and that is why I believe it is one of the greatest isekai. This show was, to quote Ark, truly fantastical, and I recommend giving it a watch. With that out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If it's your birthday, happy birthday, and I'll hopefully see you all soon. Goodbye.